Okay, so film theory, the Spider-Man 2 mystery, why he lost his powers. As a kid, I never got that part. Like, Spider-Man is just swinging around, and then suddenly he can't swing anymore, he can't crawl up walls anymore, and then this middle of the film is pretty much Peter Parker having problems and not being Spider-Man. I never enjoyed when Peter Parker didn't have powers, honestly. I loved Spider-Man, and quite frankly, I never got why he lost his powers to begin with. And I still kind of not get it to some extent today. Like, did he not want to be Spider-Man? So I never got that part. That part was never explained. I mean, I may have a few ideas, but it's not very clear. And so here comes film theory on the Spider-Man 2 mystery on how he lost his powers. It's never confirmed in canon, but let's see what they got. Theory man, theory man. Theory man, does whatever he decides. He has Spider-Man's missing mojo.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, where today we just stop to appreciate what a great year 2018 was. Oh, no, not for me. For Spider-Man. His PS...
Into the Spider-Verse is shit. But the PS4 game isn't.
4 game crushed and was nearly Game of the Year. Venom was way more enjoyable than most people expected and earned nearly $1 billion. And Into the Spider-Verse was literally the best animated movie.
I disagree! I hate Into the Spider-Verse! I'm sorry, okay? I'll get to that one day. I'm sorry, I just can't stand that movie.
Movie that I have seen in years. I mean, sure, he got dusted out of existence and all that, so that was a bit of a low point. But still, a pretty solid year on the whole. And sure, we may have lost one Spidey, press F to pay respects, but heck, Spider-Verse gave us another 6 to root for. They're multiplying like flies, or spiders, I guess. You know what else it gave us, though? An incredible tribute to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. The one that redefined what superhero movies were in their darkest days.
And I wish that the Sam Raimi Spider-Man was in the Spider-Man into... Forget it.
The trilogy responsible for the superhero renaissance. The movies that did the Thanos snap 17 years before it became a spicy meme. Sure, those references at the beginning of Into the Spider-Verse were just that. References to those past movies. This Peter Parker is not the same one as the one from those older movies, but it did get me eager to go back and revisit that original trilogy. For those of you who have...
It made me appreciate the original trilogy even more!
Seen these classics in some time, you know the basic premise. Bobblehead Tobey Maguire gets himself bitten by a genetically altered spider, great power, great responsibility, blah blah blah. Your standard Spider-Man. But upon rewatching them, there was one mystery that was never explained in the movies. One that has remained unsolved for the last 17 years, and a mystery that today, I think I can finally answer. You see, in Spider-Man 2, largely considered to be one of the best superhero movies of all time, Peter Parker loses his powers. They just stop working. No explanation, no nothing. Just pooping out at the times that he needs them the most.
Why is this happening to me?
Good question, Peter. That's what I intend to answer today. Taking this as a sign, Peter briefly gives up the mask to focus on his personal life. Later, when the threat of the super powerful Doc Ock emerges, Spidey's dragged back onto the scene, and wouldn't you know it, his powers just conveniently come back the moment that he needs them. And of course, all this is probably just for plot convenience. Like, you know how I roll. If there's an explanation that goes beyond, well, it was important to the theme of the movie, then I'm gonna find it. and I think I have. I believe that there is a legitimate scientific explanation for this seemingly random plot thread in Spider-Man 2. One that not only fills the narrative gap and gives us greater insight into the movie's themes, but also gives us a bit more information on the nature of Peter's spider abilities. So to truly understand what's happening, we have to first rewind to Spider-Man 1. So in the first movie, running parallel to Peter's spider puberty is the story of Norman Osborn, his best friend's father, who does some sciencing on himself to gain laboratory-induced superpowers with just a dollop of madness. As the newly born Green Goblin, Norman does all the usual villain stuff: menace New York, turn people into spooky, scary skeletons, dress as an old woman, and star in terrible Broadway musicals. Oh man, the stories I could tell you about that show. And yes, that character with the inflatable T-Rex coming out of his chest is the Lizard. Give that man a Tony! Anyway, the film comes to a dramatic climax when Norman drops both a tram car and Mary Jane off the Roosevelt Island Bridge. Spidey manages to save them both. Get dunked on, Andrew Garfield! But in the course of the final battle, ends up killing Norman.
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
Unsurprisingly, this takes a mental toll on Peter. After Norman's funeral, he rejects the advances of Mary Jane.
All I wanted was to tell her how much I loved her. I can't.
And listens to his best friend Harry swear vengeance upon Spider-Man.
I swear on my father's grave, Spider-Man will pay.
It's shortly after that we see Peter's powers start to fail. So looking at the events of the first movie and how they impact Peter in the second, it's my theory that Peter's power loss is directly tied to him suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Let's look at the facts. The Anxiety and Depression Association of America, or ADAA for short, lays out 4 categories of diagnostic criteria for PTSD, and Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2 qualifies in each and every one. The first set of criteria relate to the trauma itself. To pass diagnosis in this category, a patient needs to have gone through one of the following: either directly experiencing a traumatic event themselves, witnessing in person a traumatic event, or learning about traumatic events occurring to a close family member. Peter doesn't just hit one of these, he hits all 3. In the first movie, Peter, in a matter of months, experiences 2 indescribably traumatic events, both of which involve the death of father figures. First, Uncle Ben, and then Norman Osborn, a man who claims,
I've been like a father to you.
and not only do both men die, and not only does he witness both of those deaths, but they are both dead because of the action or inaction of Peter. He doesn't stop the robber, which directly leads to Sandman shooting Uncle Ben. And after some brutal psychological warfare from Norman,
The Goblin killed. I have nothing to do with it.
Don't let him take me again. Protect me.
Spider-Man jumping over the glider finishes off his other father. And all of this is without even mentioning his childhood love getting kidnapped because of her association with Peter. It's pretty much unquestionable that Peter has every reason to be suffering some level of PTSD, but is he really? Well, to know for sure, we have to move on to the second category of criteria, which looks at any lingering psychological effects of the trauma and whether memories of it are intruding into everyday life. Of the following, patients must be experiencing at least one to be diagnosed as suffering from PTSD. That list includes unwanted memories of the event interrupting the day, having dreams related to the trauma, psychological distress when exposed to cues that remind you of the event, or physiological reactions to those same cues. Throughout Spider-Man 2, we see memories of Uncle Ben intruding into Peter's everyday life. Ben's oft-repeated mantra, with great power comes great responsibility, drives Peter until he ultimately tells his uncle,
I can't live your dreams anymore.
we also know that Peter is having difficulty sleeping. He's suffering from repeated dreams of these traumatic events, as he reports to his doctor.
You say you can't sleep.
And as Dr. Connors says,
You always appear exhausted.
in short, Peter checks off each and every one of these qualifiers. And remember, only one is necessary for a diagnosis of PTSD. The